All right, this is Pounding Rocks. I'm Dr. Rocks. A little under the weather. Been soaking up Dayquil here like crazy, but I figured I'd just do a quick little update on the Nissan 720. So the rear brakes are done, and that involved replacing the shoes, the drums, freeing up the brake cables. So it does have a working parking brake now. It's still a little hard, but it holds. It's enough to pass inspection. We're good there. And that was not terrible, but I don't want to do it again. And then I turned my attention to the front brakes, and that's when I noticed that the front pads on the driver's side had been recently replaced. These are like brand spanking, almost brand spanking new. And I was wondering why the truck came with only like 2 pads in a box. But the passenger side, that left a lot to be desired. So I ended up replacing the pads with the ones that came off the red truck. And turns out the right front caliper was seized all the way out. Could only compress it about halfway, and it wouldn't go any further. So I ordered a caliper off of Rock Auto. This was $47 shipped to my house, and it bolted right on. The only thing I transferred over was the bolt, the banjo bolt for the rubber line, because the one that comes with the caliper is too short. At least it engages, but you put any torque on it, you're just going to rip the threads right out. So I used the original bolt and just put new banjo washers on it, and it seems to be staying dry. I sprayed it with brake clean about 10-15 minutes ago, and there's no drips coming out of it. I pinched off the line using some Blue Point pinchers that I have. Pinched it off right about here, so I only created an air gap about that much, and it pretty much bled out immediately, so I didn't have to bleed the rest of the system. The pedal feels great. I guess we'll find out when I start it how bad it is, but it's not, there's no more air coming out of this caliper at this point. Yeah, so what turned into just a minor brake job turned into a caliper job, and I had to pull the hubs off. To do rotors on these, you do have to pull the cap, you do have to pull the cotter pin out, you have to take that little stopper off, you have to unscrew the nut that holds the hub to the spindle. When you pull it off, the bearings, the outer bearing at least, is going to try and pop out on you, so when you put your thumb in there, just hold it. I pulled the bearing out and set it aside. You flip the rotor over, and there's 6 bolts, 6 14mm bolts on the backside. You can see the holes here for those bolts. 6 of them. You undo it, and then you just beat the old rotor off the hub. You know, I just hold the hub like this, and then I just hammer it, because I mean, you're not keeping that rotor, so just have at it. And then I clean it up with a wire brush a little bit, go around it with a wire brush, and then you line the rotor up with the holes again, and put your 14mm bolts in there, torque them down, and then, you know, slide the hub onto the spindle, put a little grease on the spindle, and slide the bearing back on, put the cap on. Well, obviously the process is reverse of what you did. You just want to make sure that you preload the bearing properly. So what I do is I tighten it down so it's snug, roll it back and forth a couple times just to get it so it's seated, and then check and make sure there's no wiggle, and then I back the nut off like 1/8 of a turn, and then I put the lock on, and I put the cotter pin in, and I put this cap back on, and should be good. There's no bearing play on this thing, so I did that on both sides. So that's how you do this. The cool thing about the 86 model that I'm finding is that a lot of transitional stuff, as Nissan was getting ready to release the D21 hardbody, they started using a lot of parts on the hardbody on this thing, especially, well, mostly with the brakes. So the pads, the caliper, all that setup is different than the Datsun ones, where you pull the pads out this way. There's like, Datsun had pins that go in with cotter pins, and you pull the pins out and the pads slide out. Obviously you could you have to remove the caliper to do the rotor, but to do just a pad slap, you just pull the 2 pins out. This caliper is the same caliper that you would find on the D21 hard bodies. So. And this is a Raybestos. Part number is FRC 3751. And aside from the banjo bolt being too short, everything else is correct. And the pads came off of a 1991. And these pads actually fit my 95 as well. So yeah, so I'm gonna drop her down from the jack stands here, which this thing was towed behind an RV, so it's got a nice big angle steel plate bolted, and it looks like it's bolted and welded to the front of the truck, so it's sturdy enough to support the weight of the truck, so it comes in handy as a nice jack point. So I'm gonna put this tire back on, torque it down, take it off the jack stands, and then in a little bit I'll probably take her for a spin up to town, just drive it around a little bit, put some miles on it, get these pads and rotors seated, and then bring it back and take some more Dayquil and try and feel better. Anyways guys, that is all I've got for today. Like, share, and subscribe, and leave me a comment down below what you'd like to see next. If you have any questions, you can reach out and I'll see what I can do to answer them. This is Dr. Rocks from Pounding Rocks Truck Shop, signing off. See ya.